Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MSP. Ukraine War news update for the 4th of July 2024. This is a military aid video. It's going to be quite a short one. There's not too much going on at the moment. We're going to start with President Zelensky talking in interview. Quite a lot was revealed in this interview, it seems. We're going to... Well, the question is, how long will this stalemate last? And his answer goes into provision of military aid and support for Ukraine. So he says it's not a stalemate, it's just a problematic situation. A stalemate is a dead end. And the problem can be solved if there is a will and tools. We have the will, but the tools have not yet arrived. That is, we have the brigades without weapons. We have reserves. We have 14 brigades that are not equipped. They do not have the appropriate weapons, which have already been voted for and discussed. To say that it's been voted for would make you think this is probably just the American aid. The packages should come, but unfortunately, they're coming very slowly. We're grateful to the Congress, there you go, for their support. Yes, but it all has to come. We cannot talk about counter-offensive actions. Today, we need to protect what we have. We want to take appropriate counter-offensive actions when we are ready. We are ready when the weapons arrive. They are not here today. And she asks, will we see the counter-offensive this year or next year? It all depends. It will happen immediately when we have all the equipment that Congress has voted for and that European leaders have supported. I don't know the schedule. Unfortunately, no one knows. And this is the biggest tragedy of this war. So the complaint is still, and you understand this, right? You're fighting for your existence, right? And a number of entities said, okay, we'll support you as long as it takes. We'll do everything. Yep. Whatever you need, you'll get. Okay, I need this, this, and this. Oh yeah, we know we said we'd get you that, but we didn't put a time frame on that. And it's kind of drip feed. And you think, well, yeah, if you put orders in for Patriot air defense systems 2 years ago, we'd be in a lot different place now. If F-16s had been a year ahead of where they are now, everything would be a bit different. And so this is constant waiting for all this stuff. Now, it's difficult because you don't want to be accused of biting the hand that feeds you. But on the other hand, it's like, yeah, but I've got hundreds and hundreds of people dying every single day as a result of not having the right stuff. So it's that fine balancing act between, reflecting the desperation of things in a war zone and being grateful for all the help you're getting, but also, recognizing that you need more and you need it quicker. And the frustration there is that actually most entities could give you more stuff more quickly. I know, but people like Germany and UK, to some extent, we like UK is underinvested in defence, and so we have empty cupboards. Could we be doing more? I'm sure we could. Could we be doing it quicker? I'm sure we could. The US has that stuff in the cupboard, ready and waiting to go. And so I guess that's predominantly where the frustration comes from. Interesting that, you've got 14 brigades there that hot to trot just don't have the kit. Having said that, Biden administration has announced additional security assistance for Ukraine. So there's a PDA, Presidential Drawdown Authority package valued at $150 million. So these are the PDAs are equipment from US stocks that can be given straight to Ukraine. And then you get replenishment. But remember, that has a value, but it's been bought and paid for. So that is not, although it says $150 million there of kit, it's not giving $150 million to Ukraine. It's giving stuff that you've had often for a long time that has a certain amount of value. Now, you could conceivably sell that to someone else. So there's an opportunity cost of not selling it to someone else. Okay. But you might also be getting rid of it eventually as it becomes obsolete and paying for that to be decommissioned. So it depends which way you want to use that opportunity cost there. And then what happens is, through separate monies, that gets replenished because actually you've not paid for that. There's no money saying we're going to pay for this equipment to go there, other than like transport costs, right? So it's $0. That is $0, but it's worth, on their books, it's worth $150 million. And then they spend an amount of money that replaces that equipment. It might not be one for one. We've talked about this before. So there's no guarantee it's one for one, because it depends what the strategic needs of the US are. For example, when they're getting rid of certain cluster munitions that they don't use, or D-Picken shells. So offloading, say, 1 million D-Picken shells, like cluster artillery shells, they aren't replacing them with cluster artillery shells because they don't use them. They're obsolete. So that can be something that doesn't even get replaced, right? You can have that. We're not even going to replace it because we're not going to use those because we've signed up for not using them, or whatever. Or it could be that, okay, we've sent you these missiles. We sent you 200 of these missiles, but actually we don't need 200 of those missiles. What we need is 10 of these other missiles. So the replacement for those 200 older missiles are 10 newer missiles. And that leaves us in strategically the same position that we were in. So there's lots that goes on around this. But the end result is whatever goes to Ukraine gets replaced in some way, unless it's fully obsolete. If there's a need for that equipment that goes to Ukraine, it gets replaced by newer equipment, right? Which is better, which leaves the US in a better strategic position. But anyway, so you got $150 million worth of stuff. Now, here's where money is money, right? The $2.2 billion of Security Assistance Initiative funds, so USAI funding, is orders being put into manufacturers for kit to send to Ukraine. So this is like, we're going to put orders in for $2.2 billion worth of stuff. Now remember that this is putting money into the US economy that then generates money, so it becomes a money multiplier. So as you give money to this company employs more people, buys more capital, which they're buying from, the US, and they're buying sandwiches locally because there are more people in working, and the local economy gets tax dollars, and then the federal government gets tax dollars. So some of that regenerates and comes back to the coffers. So it'd be interesting to know what out of the $2.2 billion eventually comes back. It depends how long you equate that over. But anyway, so some of that will be coming back into the US coffers anyway, be generated economically, stimulating the local area and federal as well, and and those pieces of kit then, and then there are shareholders and pensions that might be based on those shareholders, blah blah blah. Military industrial complex, always a bit controversial to support money going into that sector, or can be. And then that equipment goes to Ukraine. So again, it's not like giving wadges of cash to Ukraine. It's giving stuff that you've built in your own country and giving that to Ukraine. And that doesn't need replacing, because that is putting that order into your own companies there. And what they are doing is $2.2 billion worth of interceptors for Patriot and NASAMS air defense systems. Now, what's interesting with that is that's an awful lot of money on just a couple of things. And I think this suggests that Ukraine are just about to receive a number of Patriot air defense systems, and as well NASAMS are on the cards too. There's still that one waiting to go from Canada that's been ordered from the US. So good news by point of fact that I think there's an indication of more Patriot systems, but nothing outside of really missiles. And the $150 million worth of PDA here are Hawk missiles, so that's interesting that they are using them. I showed you the side of the Hawk missile system this morning that had notches from the various missiles and drones that they've shot down. So these are being used effectively. So sending out more Hawk missiles, ammunition for HIMARS, GIMLRS, guided multiple launch rocket systems, 155mm and 105mm artillery rounds, 81mm mortar rounds. So that's kind of your bread and butter of the Ukrainian war effort. TOW missiles for the top of Bradleys. They obviously use these way more. I've said this previously, but they always have TOW missiles, and we see very few incidences of TOW missiles being used on military equipment and blowing up other tanks. We have seen them, but considering they are always getting TOW missiles, you're thinking they're using these a lot more than video evidence would indicate, and that's almost certainly because they use them against buildings and trench lines and stuff like that. So it's not just, we see the ones where they use it blowing up a tank. Whoa, that looks cool. Yeah, Russian tank blown up. Actually, they're probably throwing loads of these, effectively ATGMs. These are not fire and forget. They're connected by a wire, thin wire, and you have to optically look at them, optically tracked, wire guided. So you have to keep looking at it. You can't fire it, turn away, and drive off. That'd be safer. But nonetheless, these are good bits of kit, pretty decent range. Smacks into, I think, probably buildings and trenches and whatnot, and they're probably using them a lot for that. Javelin and AET-4 anti-armor systems, so anti-tank guided missiles and similar. Small arms, ammunition and grenades, demolition equipment and munitions, tactical vehicles to tow and haul equipment, tactical air navigation systems and aircraft support equipment, and spare parts maintenance and other field and ancillary equipment. So doesn't look like there's any kind of Bradleys or Abrams or big ticket stuff like that, but this is all the equipment that Ukraine need on a consistent basis every week of this war. Okay, Vinnytsia City Council has delivered a batch of 2,000 FPV strike drones to the Ukrainian Armed Forces. I don't know whether this is counted in the 3,000 per day amount, but my goodness, that's brilliant. A city council saying, we've just generated these 2,000 drones. Who wants them? Yeah, thank you very much. 2,000 drones. Excellent stuff there. Now, massive German arms delivery to Ukraine yesterday, including 40 tank systems, says Julian Röpke. Waiting for German aid to Ukraine to say something about this. 22,000 artillery shells, 3 HIMARS, 2 modern air defense systems, and much more. So that is very interesting. I'm not going to trust my translation of these very long, unnecessarily long German words. Brückenlegepanzer, the Bibet, so that's the bridge, actually, that's the bridge. Pioneer Panzer, that's the DAX, that's the armoured engineering vehicle. So 11 of those, 21 of those, 18 Berger Panzer 2, so they are armoured recovery vehicles. 42 Minenraumpanzer Vicent, so that's a Vicent 1, that's demining vehicles. 42. And material for Kampfmittelbeseitigung als Bundeswehr und Industriebestanden. That's from both German army stocks and from industry. Material for Kampfmittel, I don't know, field something, I don't know, who knows. Anyway, that's a lot there. Now, is that over total, or to have 21 Bibers, 11 Pioneer Panzers and 18 Berger Panzer 2s and 42 Vicent 1s, is that in total, or is that what they've just given in this delivery? I mean, that sounds huge to me. And 3 HIMARS systems and 4 IRIS-T SLM and 2 IRIS-T SLS, so the short range and medium range system. I don't know what Civil 1 and Civil 3, so I don't know. So I'd be interested to know what is kind of definitely new. 120 Marder, 50 Leopard 105s, munition for Marder and Leopard 1s. This has to be totals. This can't be like suddenly delivering them. But Julian Röpke says massive arms delivery to Ukraine yesterday. So, like, the implication is that that's what they delivered yesterday. That's just absolutely massive number of Marder and Leopard 1s. It'd be fantastic if that is the case. Anyway, Julian Röpke's feeling a bit pro-German here. Like, yeah, what's your country doing to arm Ukraine? Yeah, this is what we're doing in Germany. And fair enough. You know, good question. What's Spain doing? What's Portugal doing? What's okay. France has donated 41 electric generators to Kharkiv and Chernihiv, the regions hardest hit by Russian strikes on energy infrastructure. These attacks have resulted in Ukraine losing about 70% of its available electricity generation. Good news there from France. They're going to need a lot of those generators. A new counter-offensive is a matter of army brigades. Actually, that should have been earlier. Sorry about that. The army is now better equipped with personnel than it was a few months ago. Now, it's not a dead end, but a problematic situation. So the addition there to what we heard in that interview is this bit at the beginning. Better equipped now than it was a few months ago. And of course, those 14 brigades and just waiting till they are stocked up before considering a counterattack or counteroffensive. Now, Vladimir Tarabarin, Russian ambassador to the Netherlands, has threatened military strikes on a Dutch airbase at Volkel, where the F-16s are to be transferred to Ukraine and where they are currently located. This fascist needs to be expelled, says Igor Sushko, or better yet, just send him to The Hague. I mean, this is outrageous. This is threatening to bomb a Dutch airbase. Like, what's happening about that? Any comeback? That's an incredible threat. And a final thing, I'm not going to go into this. What I'm going to do is ask you to read it. I have highlighted it myself. I've read it fully. This is an absolutely fascinating article. So you can see all the highlights there. Lots to read through in this. But I'm not going to do it. But Financial Times article, The Untold Story of the Most Chaotic NATO Summit Ever. So this is in 2018 when Trump went to NATO and then threatened them with pulling out of NATO. And then they had this, and he did it in a really unusual way because it was during a summit meeting where you wouldn't normally bring up something like this. And he started accusing all these nations of not paying enough. And it gives you the account of what happened there from talking to people. The interesting thing about, I will read you this part. It says Trump's first NATO summit the previous year had been a muted affair during which he largely kept his isolationist rhetoric and his temper in check. Back then, he was still being handled and hemmed in by his staff, but now, after 18 months in office, he'd come to Brussels determined to awaken Europe to a stark new geopolitical reality. The NATO that will meet in Washington next week for its 75th anniversary summit has been vastly reshaped by the changed landscape. America's NATO allies have ramped up defense spending to unprecedented levels. They will spend a combined $430 billion this year, 55% more than before Trump's Brussels interventions. The following account of the 2018 summit is based on conversations with more than 24 leaders, officials and advisors who were present then. All of them spoke on the condition of anonymity. And I love this bit. Many winced at the memory. So this was this really bombastic performance, I guess, by Trump, and it's fascinating insight into like what he kind of correctly did, which is say you guys aren't paying enough, but it was genuinely thinking about pulling the US out of NATO. And there are issues with how he sees payment. I said I'm not going to go into this, and now I seem to this is my big problem with the whole approach that so many people seem to think is how NATO operates. So his quote was, massive amounts of money is owed. It's not, NATO isn't something, again, that you pay for, that and then now you owe, if you haven't paid up, you owe someone for that. You're paying on your own defense, right? And we expect you to pay more for your own defense, but it's your security. You don't owe us if you haven't done that. Like, if you haven't spent enough on your defense, you don't owe me $1 billion. So it's just this massive misunderstanding that even the President of the United States has in terms of NATO and this transactional element. But I've talked about this all before. And he says the United States have paid up and stepped up like nobody. This has gone on for decades, by the way. This has gone on for many presidents, but no other president brought it up like I bring it up. So something has to be done. And indeed, he did say some of the right things, but probably in the wrong way, but in the right way, so that people actually went, oh, shit. So he gave everyone a bit of a bollocking at that meeting, and then everyone kind of panicked and ran around, and they went to the Jens Stoltenberg's office and got them to print up some graphs that made things look good, and said that okay, we're going to give extra 33 billion. And then Trump was like, oh, brilliant. So I've succeeded. I'm brilliant. And then went out and gave a press conference, which was very unusual because usually the Secretary General gives a press conference straight away after. Trump was like, no, move aside, guys. It's all about me. And fair enough. And he went and gave this press conference that said, look what I've done. I'm amazing. I'm cool. And they've got this. Now, whether that was actually as much as he thought it was or coming from... It might have been a bit fudged is what I'm getting at. It's the indication I get from there. And then eventually, NATO's really properly stepped up, and of course Trump takes a lot of responsibility for that. But I keep saying, it's not that he was wrong. He was right that people needed to pay more, but it's still just a completely ham-fisted understanding of how it all works. And the end result is this. So the motivation for increasing defence spending, so where we're at right now, said another, it wasn't just about Trump. It was about a range of other issues to do with increasing threats, etc. I don't think you will ever find any European leaders who say that they increased defence spending as a result of Trump's hectoring. But I'm sure that it had an impact behind the scenes for some countries as they were making their calculations at the margins. I mean, he particularly had to go the countries at the bottom of the list, like Spain and I think the Czech Republic at the time. The Czech Republic claimed that their GDP had gone up really quickly, and so their defence spending hadn't been able to catch up with that, because you usually do your defence spending a long time in advance, and if you have like an economic boom, then there can be an unfair disparity there. That was their excuse. What's quite interesting is he let Slovenia off the hook. Of course, his wife, who was with him at that NATO conference, or at the whole event in the evenings, she's Slovenian, right? And he was like, he's had to go at everyone, and Slovenia were the fourth lowest payers, and he didn't have a go at Slovenia. It's like, that's interesting. But anyway, it's a fascinating article, because this it gives you a timeline of the meeting and what's happening and who was panicking and who, Merkel getting down, going over to speak to Jens Stoltenberg, then going over to whisper to Trump, going back to Jens Stoltenberg, all of the intricacies of the meeting. Fascinating article there. I think I'll leave you with that, because as I said, I spoke about it yesterday, although I've gone and spoken about it again. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and share. Take care. Speak soon. Toodle pips.